Dak Prescott has been the same. Against the Miami Dolphins, Dak Prescott was awesome. Dak Prescott. Yep. Dak Prescott had his MVP drive to show you that no longer do we need to ask the question that when my number is called upon, will I show up? This is the defense that is supposedly built to play ahead.
Ryan Clark actually just made a damn good point as it pertains to Dak Prescott, because he brought up the fact that Dak Prescott did in fact still show that he should still be in very strong consideration for a league MVP. And not only does all the numbers show it, including a stat that literally tells you who the most valuable player is, but even history supports this particular claim. I love what Ryan Clark was getting at here, because even in calling out the defense, he still gave Dak Prescott his flowers. Dak did his job. He got his team in position to score a touchdown and did just that. And the defense couldn't finish the job and keep the Dolphins from getting a field goal, which has been a common issue for the defense as the season has waned. For the last few seasons now under Dan Quinn, the defense turns more into a bend but don't break style defense as we get into December and January. And that's a little bit worrisome because we're seeing that same trend start to pop up. But we'll talk about the defense in another video. What I want to talk about today is the fact that literally there should be no argument who the league MVP should really be. And it's Dak Prescott by a mile. It's essentially a four-man race right now. We have Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Dak Prescott, and Tyreek Hill. Two of those guys literally should not be on this list, and one of those guys isn't having as good as a season as the other, which really leaves only one true answer. So let's jump to Tyreek Hill first. The main criticism people have of the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott was they were stat padding against bad teams. They did all their work against the bad teams. Interesting that you say that, because literally Tyreek Hill has done the same thing all season long. His best games were against some of what we now know are some of the worst teams in the league. The Chargers, 215 yards. The Denver Broncos, they got all kind of dysfunction going on. And in the game in which they scored 70 points, even though he had 157 yards, he only had one touchdown. So they scored 70 points, and he only accounted for 10% of their offensive output as far as scoring points, which is what actually wins you games, not just accumulating yards. Against the New York Giants, bank it, 181 yards. Again, only one touchdown in a game in which they scored 31 points. You would think if a receiver is looked at as being a league MVP, he would have a large portion of his team scoring under his belt. That's not the case with Tyreek Hill. Again, Carolina Panthers, 163 yards. The Las Vegas Raiders, 146 yards, and the Washington Commanders, 157 yards. Those were Tyreek Hill's best games this season. Actually, those were Tyreek Hill's really only 100-yard games this season, outside of two other ones, one against the Jets, and I think there was another one in there mixed in against the New England Patriots. But beyond that, those are the games that he did all of his work in. Against actual playoff contending teams, he didn't have a 100-yard receiving game, and in those games, I don't even think he scored a touchdown, outside of the one against Philly, and we know that was a garbage time TD. So again, Tyreek Hill doing all of his work against scrubs, not really showing up against the big teams, and not scoring touchdowns. He's getting tons of yards, not touchdowns though. He shouldn't be an MVP, especially when you consider that Jerry Rice, a guy that when they were only playing 16 games in a season, put up 1,848 yards for an entire season, guys, on 122 receptions, scoring 15 receiving touchdowns, and he did not win a league MVP. In fact, Jerry Rice never won a league MVP. The most he got was an Offensive Player of the Year award. Why should Tyreek Hill eclipse what Jerry Rice accomplished? And Jerry Rice actually had a more prolific season than Tyreek Hill that season by pretty much every metric, especially if you're looking at it on a 16-game scale. So Tyreek Hill, he's out of the box. Let's look at Christian McCaffrey. And this one actually has some precedent that has been set as it pertains to running backs who have won league MVP. So let's go ahead and look at what the standard is for NFL running backs who have won MVP. And spoiler alert, there's only been 4 to win league MVP after the year 2000, which that's pretty much where we're going to start at as far as looking at those particular running backs. But even then, Even all the way back to 1973, to win MVP as a running back, you essentially have to have a 2,000-yard rushing season, or damn near very much close to it, or like a 2,300-yard all-purpose yard type of season. You have to have like some astronomical season with a ton of touchdowns in addition to that. But the last running back to win league MVP was Adrian Peterson in 2012. He had 2,000 yards rushing, almost 2,100 yards rushing, averaged 6 yards per carry, 131 rushing yards per game, scored 12 touchdowns that season on the ground, added 200 more receiving yards and another receiving touchdown. So essentially, this guy had 2,300 all-purpose yards and about 15 plus touchdowns, right? And that was the last running back to win league MVP. As of right now, Christian McCaffrey is nowhere near on pace for 2,000 rushing yards. And to be quite honest, his impact in the receiving game, while he is a good receiving threat, he only has like 500 receiving yards, which again, that's really, really good for a running back. But at the same time, he's going to be barely scraping by as far as getting to 2,000 all-purpose yards. Not running back MVP level, okay? I'm not just going to look at Adrian Peterson. Even if we look at LaDainian Tomlinson, who was the last running back before AP that won MVP. LaDainian Tomlinson had 1,800 rushing yards, 28 rushing touchdowns, 500 yards receiving, and added another 3 rushing touchdowns. So he had 30 touchdowns for the entire season, which again, Christian McCaffrey is being very, very productive this season. He's having a very, very good year. I mean, overall, he has 14 rushing touchdowns, which was literally half of what LaDainian Tomlinson had, and 7 receiving touchdowns, which is really damn good. But even he still doesn't live up to the standard that has been set by previous running backs who have won this award. Again, Shaun Alexander, right before LaDainian Tomlinson. Shaun Alexander had 1,800, almost 1,900 rushing yards, 27 rushing touchdowns, and he made up a large portion of that offensive scoring. He was essentially really the only and main option on that Seattle team, guys. The 49ers right now, Brock Purdy is an MVP candidate, Christian McCaffrey is an MVP candidate, Deebo Samuel is a weapon, Brandon Ayuk is a weapon. They probably have one of, if not the best left tackle in all of NFL history on their team. George Kittle is an all-pro level tight end. They have weapons all over the field. Christian McCaffrey is definitely disqualified. And this is probably the easiest part right here. Dak Prescott versus Lamar Jackson. Dak Prescott is just having a much better season overall as a quarterback than Lamar Jackson is currently having. He's thrown for 11 more touchdowns with the same amount of interceptions, only 7 interceptions. He has a 7-point higher passer rating than Lamar Jackson does. Then you want to talk about, oh, Lamar Jackson is running. Lamar Jackson only accounted for 3 more rushing touchdowns than Dak Prescott has all season. Lamar Jackson overall only has like 20 or 30 more all-purpose yards than Dak Prescott this season. And Dak Prescott has been the better quarterback this season. If you look at the statistics, Dak Prescott ranks higher in QBR, passer rating, completion percentage, literally every actual QB metric, Dak Prescott ranks higher in, and he's getting less help from his defense. We clearly just saw the Baltimore Ravens defense was the main reason that they won that game against the San Francisco 49ers. He is getting a lot of help from his defense. His defense is showing up in big moments, and that's what Ryan Clark was alluding to. Our defense did not show up when the quarterback put them in position to win. Our defense has been a little bit suspect, even though it has kind of been a bend but don't break defense and haven't been giving up a ton of points. It's been the times and the different penalties and the boneheaded mistakes and the timing of when different things happen with our defense, where it's like, what is going on? Where Lamar Jackson is getting a lot of assistance from being carried by one of, if not the best defense in the National Football League. I understand Lamar Jackson probably has the same amount of or same level of weapons that Dak Prescott has on his offense. CeeDee Lamb is obviously a better weapon than anything Lamar Jackson has over there, but Lamar Jackson's other receivers are pretty much on the same level as the receivers Dak Prescott has on his team. The running game is pretty much a wash. The tight end, you would probably give the Ravens the advantage as far as their tight end goes. Their tight end is a Pro Bowl level tight end. Even though he has been injured at points in this season, he still is a weapon that's available for Lamar Jackson. And Dak Prescott is performing better than Lamar Jackson. He's thrown for 500 more passing yards than Lamar Jackson. Okay, Lamar has 500 more rushing yards. We're talking about quarterback. not running back. So even though the media may default to giving Lamar Jackson his second MVP award, I still firmly believe what Ryan Clark said. And yes, I agree that the defense needs to step it up, but I also agree that Dak Prescott has still 100% shown why he should be a leading MVP candidate in the NFL this year. And I just broke down the stats to you to show why that actually isn't all that far-fetched. Either way, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Y'all know how we always end these videos, how the Cowboys. I'll see you guys next time. Love you guys. Take it away, Pastor.
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still the ball? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Hey! Woo! Hey! I'm still them boys.